Hey, what's good? These days, it seems like the president has overreached his authority on so many different levels. Over on the Crash Course channel, they have a video called Presidential Power, Crash Course on Government and Politics. Before we get into it, remember to go to coconutjustice.com to get you some clothes that I think would look good on you. Let's go. All right, y'all. Let's learn about presidential power. PBS. Hell
This
yeah.
episode of Crash Course is brought to
Shout
you
out,
by...
shout out PBS. Public Broadcasting System, is it? They were created because not everyone has money, right? But yet we believe that the United States believes that you should have some sort of information available so you can make up your mind, right? And PBS was supposed to be that. And I believe it got unfunded or defunded because the current administration said that it was too costly, and that it said something about left-leaning stuff too. So anyway, shout out PBS. Let's go, Crash Course.
Hi, I'm Craig, and this is Crash Course Government and Politics, and today we're going to talk about the most powerful person in the U.S. No, not Chris Hemsworth, although he is powerful in a physical sense. We're talking about the President of the U.S., who right now is Barack Obama.
Chris Hemsworth played Thor. There you go.
That's the last we'll mention him specifically. Instead, we'll examine the office of the presidency and what makes whoever holds the office so powerful. We're also going to talk about what makes him, and so far the president has always been a him, less powerful than you might think.
Maybe that he might want to think.
So you might have noticed a trend in these episodes that we like to start with what the Constitution says about the branches of government. That's not just because it's what appears on tests or what strict constructionist Justice Scalia would want us to do. We start with the Constitution because it gives us a formal description of the branch, in this case, the executive.
Right. So the Constitution, we've learned on this channel, the Constitution is basically the rule book for people that decide to either become or remain Americans. That's the guidebook. We don't have to check with the king. We don't have to check with the queen. We don't have to check with anybody. We check with the rule book.
Which we can build. What do you mean, upon which we can build? That's nonsense. The Constitution is a limited document. It lays the framework and the rules, and that's all. All this extra stuff is an unconstitutional power grab. Oh, clone from the right. I was wondering what happened to you, clones. That's a good point you make, but really, the world is more complicated than it was in 1787, and we need to have a more flexible government. The Constitution provides a framework for understanding it, but it needs to change with the times. Besides, if the president becomes more powerful than what's suggested in the Constitution, whose fault is that? Congress. That's who. Okay, clones, we get the picture. There's a debate about the role of the Constitution in setting up the government, and we're not going to solve it today. For now, we're going to start with the Constitution and what it says about the president. You win this round, clone from the right. All right, let's try to keep those convos in the clone zone going forward. Thank you. Anyway, as with Congress, the Constitution lays out certain qualifications for the presidency. If you want to be president of the U.S., and I know you do, you must be 35 years old, which in the 1780s was actually pretty old. You were expected to have moved out of your parents' house by that point. And you must be a citizen of the U.S. who was born in the United States. Or
I bet you they had a lot more well, actually, back in those days, maybe you didn't want those jobs. Those jobs were very low paying.
its territories. The president is not elected directly by the American people. Yeah, your mind is blown. In the Constitution, as originally written, only members of the House of Representatives were directly elected by qualified citizens. The president is actually chosen by the Electoral College, which is complicated and frustrating for many Americans, and we're not going to go into it now, except to say that the reason it exists is that the framers didn't trust the popular vote all that much.
Yeah, so people in power make rules to remain in power. It's just as simple. It's just that simple.
In the Electoral College as a safeguard against the people electing scary demagogues, or the person they wanted elected. Some people say that this is not particularly democratic, mostly because it's not particularly democratic. So democratically elected or not, the president is pretty powerful, but he has different categories of powers. What are they? First, he has military powers to send soldiers and planes and ships to do military things. He also has judicial powers in that he appoints federal judges and
not necessarily to Portland.
court judges, subject to Senate approval, of course. He is the nation's chief diplomat, which is the source of his foreign policy power. The president can also propose laws, although he has to get a congressman or senator to actually introduce them into Congress. This is a legislative.
Pay attention to what they're saying. This dude that currently is trying to make rules, he's got like 250 some odd, whatever it is. Not mandates, whatever it is. So he's basically creating rules by himself. But the rules are, if you have an idea as the president, if you have an idea that's going to, for a law that's going to improve, I guess it didn't even have to improve. If you have an idea for a law, you have to get laws made in Congress. You have to start at the House, you convince the House, and then they convince the Senate, and then it goes on into the president, who then signs it into law, and then the judges, Supreme Court, and all the judges in all the courts that you go to, they just make sure that those rules are interpreted correctly, and that's how it works. A president has to check with Congress, has to work with Congress. That's bananas. The first thing he said, and oh boy, today is working contrary to how he should.
And since he's the chief executive, he also has executive power, which means that he's supposed to ensure that the laws are carried out. This is his most far-reaching power, probably because it's the least well-defined. Executive power is a pretty big deal, so we're going to give that its own episode. Another way to describe the president's powers is as either formal or informal. Formal powers are the ones we can find in the Constitution itself, mainly in Article 2. The informal powers come either from Congress or the president himself. But for now, let's look at the formal powers, which, like those given to Congress, are also known as express powers. Let's go to the thought bubble. Unfortunately, presidents don't derive their powers from the sun like Superman, or from exposure to radiation like the Fantastic Four or the Hulk. Their powers come from the Constitution, which, again, unfortunately, doesn't have any supernatural or mystical power, although some people like to think it does. The first power given...
But that's just it. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to be cool. It's supposed to be steady. Even business people don't like when there's a disruptive president, because you can't move and shake and do all the things if the rules are constantly changing. You have one guy, you have one guy that thinks everything he does and says is the best and is supposed to be and all this stuff. Little or no checking with literally everyone who that affects. It's not, what's happening today is not American. It is not American. It's contrary to the Constitution.
The president in the Constitution is that he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, which at the time was just the Army and Navy since there were no airplanes. There's a reason why this should be the first power. If there's one thing that almost everyone can agree on, it's that the first job of government is to keep its citizens safe, especially from foreign invasion. The U.S. has had a lot of generals
and domestic invasion, for
Washington,
that matter.
Jackson, William Henry Harrison, Taylor, Grant, Eisenhower, and many others have served in the military, but only one president has led the U.S. troops in the field while he was president, and that was George Washington. The Whiskey Rebellion. That's something worth fighting over. The president has
Just going to throw this in there. Current one had bone spurs.
powers, although he doesn't actually do most of the diplomacy. The president has the power to make treaties, which are mostly written by the State Department officials, but he takes credit. He appoints ambassadors in those State Department officials I just mentioned. His most visible foreign policy power is to receive ambassadors, which not only makes for great photo opportunities, selfie, but also is a significant power because receiving an ambassador effectively means recognition of that ambassador's country's existence. So the president can actually legitimize a nation state. Maybe he does have superpowers. The Constitution requires that the president from time to time inform Congress of the State of the Union. This takes the form of an annual State of the Union address. Historically, presidents did this in writing, although George Washington made a formal address. We have Woodrow Wilson to thank for reviving the practice of making the State of the Union an actual speech, which now appears on television early each year. This may not seem like much of a power, but the State of the Union is a chance for the president to set a policy agenda for the next year, and it can put some pressure on Congress to make policies. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So the president has a couple of other powers we've already talked about. The president has a formal legislative power to veto laws passed by Congress. He also has the power to convene Congress into special sessions. The president also has judicial powers. He can appoint judges, but only with the consent of the Senate. He does have the power to grant pardons and reprieves, which doesn't sound like a big deal unless you're in jail or threatened by criminal prosecution, in which case it's a very big deal. So there you
I don't know if you guys know this, but the current administration is making pretty good money off of, we'll say, pardon, a pardon fund. It's kind of like some people might say grift. Some people might say income stream, where the current president has been known to take financial incentives and letting people go out of, or get released from jail and their sentence commuted, whether or not that person got found guilty, whether or not that person admitted to being guilty.
Those are the formal constitutional powers of the President of the United States. You may have noticed that there aren't all that many of them, which is kind of the point. The framers of the Constitution wanted a limited government, one that couldn't oppress the people. They were especially afraid of a strong executive like a king in charge of a standing army, so they deliberately tried to curtail his powers by not giving him very many. But as we'll see in the next few episodes, over the course of the last 240 years or so, the powers of the president have expanded far beyond what the framers probably envisioned. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.
There you go, nice and quick. Just a few minutes to remind us that what's happening today isn't supposed to be happening. That's not how the rule book was written. And I'm sure that there are people out there that are saying, he's not breaking any laws. He's not. What did the kids say? Miss me with that mess? Yeah. Executive orders, that's what I was trying to remember earlier. The current administration, the current president has made over 200, I think it was 250 executive orders. And it's not supposed to be that way. If you want to make laws, that's just how it works. We're going to be taking a look at a lot more Schoolhouse Rock videos too, so then that way we can learn together or refresh our memories as to how all of this stuff is supposed to be working. But in this video, and this was made 10 years ago. In this video, we learned that rules, if not being broken, they're definitely being bent and strained. And there's a lot of gray area. And like even what he's doing, creating this ballroom, is illegal. Like this is money that all money has to go through Congress first. It's just that simple. Otherwise, you have someone like this. This dude is getting so rich. This dude is getting so rich. Him and his family are making so much money. And it's unfortunate that we have a lot of citizens of this nation that are just asleep at the wheel. It's not supposed to be this way. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with each and every one of your friends. And if you want to come hang out with me, watch videos while I work on creative projects, hit that subscribe button and then change the little bell icon so it says all. That way, every time I come out with something new, you'll be alerted. Don't forget to go to coconutjustice.com to get you some dope gear. And with that,